Because of the obvious threat to untold numbers of citizens and because of the crisis which is even now developing, this radio station will remain on the air day and night. This station and hundreds of other radio and TV stations throughout this part of the country are pooling their resources through an emergency network hookup to keep you informed of all developments. At this hour, we repeat, these are the facts as we know them. There is an epidemic of mass murder being committed by a virtual army of unidentified assassins. The murders are taking place in villages, cities, rural homes, and suburbs with no apparent pattern or reason for the slayings. It seems to be a sudden, general explosion of mass homicide. We have some descriptions of the assassins. Eyewitnesses say they are ordinary-looking people. Some say they appear to be in a kind of trance. Others describe them as being So, at this point, there is no really authentic way for us to say who or what to look for and guard yourself against. Misshapen monsters. Reaction of law enforcement officials is one of complete bewilderment at this hour. So far, we have been unable to determine that any kind of organized investigation is yet underway. Police, sheriff deputies, and emergency ambulances are literally deluged with calls for help. The scene can best be described as mayhem. Mayors of Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Miami, along with the governors of several eastern and midwestern states, have indicated the National Guard may be mobilized at any moment, but that has not happened as yet. The only advice our reporters have been able to get from official sources is for private citizens to stay in their homes behind locked doors. Do not venture outside for any reason until the nature of this crisis has been determined and until we can advise what course of action to take. Keep listening to radio and TV for any special instructions as this crisis develops further. Thousands of office and factory workers are being urged to stay at their places of employment, not to make any attempt to get to their homes. However, in spite of this urging and warning, streets and highways are packed with frantic people trying to reach their families or apparently to flee just anywhere. We repeat, the safest course of action at this time is simply to stay where you just received word that the president has called a meeting of his cabinet to deal with the sudden epidemic of murder which has seized the eastern third of this nation. The meeting is scheduled to convene within the hour. Members of the presidential cabinet will be joined by officials of the FBI and joint meetings behind closed doors. The White House spokesman, in announcing this conference, says there will be an official announcement as soon as possible following that meeting. This is the latest dispatch just received in our newsroom. Latest word also from National Press Services in Washington, D.C. now tells us that the emergency presidential conference, which we've just mentioned, will include high-ranking scientists from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. That's the extent of this latest meeting. Members of his cabinet, the FBI, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and scientists from NASA within the hour. All radio and TV stations throughout this part of the country, including the one to which you were listening, have joined their facilities in an emergency network to bring you this news as it develops. We urge you to stay tuned to radio and TV and to stay indoors at all costs. Late reports reaching this newsroom tell of frightened people seeking refuge in churches, schools, and government buildings, demanding shelter and protection from the wholesale murder which apparently is engulfing much of the nation. Law enforcement officials are at a loss to explain or, even at this hour, even to theorize about the reasons for this wave of murder. So far, the advice we're able to give the public is summary. Chief T.K. Dunmore of Camden, North Carolina, was quoted as saying, quote, "Tell the people, for God's sake, to get off the streets. Tell them to go home and lock their doors and windows up tight. We don't know what kind of murder-happy characters we have here." End quote. He's Chief Dunmore of Camden, North Carolina. So far, the only descriptions, the only clues anyone has of the killers come from frightened witnesses of some of the slaves. These eyewitness accounts variously describe the murderers as ordinary-looking people, misshapen monsters, people who look like they're in a trance, and things that look like people but act like animals. Some eyewitnesses tell of seeing victims who look as though they had been torn apart. eastern portion of Texas. Similar killings have been reported around the Houston and Galveston areas, but nothing like...
I found a gun and some bullets out there.
It was only late yesterday
and
when it
these.
first became clear we were facing some kind of national emergency. When first reports began filtering in, newsmen and law enforcement agencies were of the opinion...
This place is boarded up pretty solid now.
...in nature. However, as these...
We ought to be all right here for a while.
...dramatically, it was soon apparent that
we have
this
the
was
gun and
more than the
bullets,
usual run of lawlessness.
Food and the radio.
Some began to suspect an obscure kind of conspiracy.
Sooner or later, someone's bound to come and get us out.
Creatures from outer space. So again, we joined with law enforcement agencies, urging you to seek shelter in a building. Lock the doors and windows securely.
Hey, that's us. We're doing all right.
Cautious of any suspicious strangers. And keep tuned to your radio and television for survival instructions and further details of this continuing story.
Look, I don't know if you're hearing me,
Goes on in the absence of any
but I'm going upstairs now.
It's almost as though some critical balance of...
If anything should try to break in here, I can hear it from up there. I'll be down to take care of it.
Savage killers. We repeat, this radio station...
Everything is all right for now. I'll be back to reinforce the windows and doors later. But you'll be all right for now, okay? Okay.